And welcome to another Round the Rotary with me, your host, JP Warren. And before we kick things off, I'd like to say Round the Rotary podcast is brought to you by Capital Petroleum Consultants. CPC specializes in project engineering and well site supervision in all disciplines in the oil and gas industry. Contact us through www.capitalpetroleumconsultants.com to see what CPC can do for you today. So anyways, I want to introduce our very special guest today, who we're actually doing this remote via Zoom. And as always, we hope that the connection will stay and that we can continue a smooth conversation without the normal Zoom pauses and breaks in communication. So with us today, I'm excited to announce that we have Maria Mejia, the CFO and Senior Vice President at Ulterra Drilling Technologies. Did I get that right?
That is perfect.
I got that right. So how are you doing today?
I'm very good. How are you, JP?
I'm doing about the same. We were talking about this. I know we've done a couple. I've done about 30, 31 of these things, but every time I do these, I get a little bit nervous. I get a little antsy, so I might be talking too much. But so we don't do that. How about you start the talking? How about you give us a little background about where you're from and kind of what brought you to your position today?
Yeah, talking about being nervous, with my accent. So I'll start with that. I'm originally from Colombia, South America. I've been here in Texas a little over 20 years. I moved from Colombia to Texas for an internship in manufacturing. I was going to college in Colombia. I got an internship opportunity, moved up here, and decided to finish school here. So went to the University of Texas at Arlington, graduated from there, and stayed a little bit with the manufacturing company, and then went into trucking.
So what did you study during your university time?
In international business.
Okay. All right. I think I that's where I got my math.
With a major in Spanish. I cheated though. I said a minor in Spanish to try to boost up my GPA. So
you figure you might do well. You might do well in those classes.
5.0, 4.0. So I finished that degree, stayed a little bit with the manufacturing company, and then went into trucking. I was in trucking. So the Bright family, Bum Bright, who used to own the Dallas Cowboys, they had a trucking company. And I was there, started from, staff accountant. I walked into this company and they had this big blue ledger still and very old school. I was a little overwhelmed, but I was there over almost 8 years.
Okay.
And I went, from staff accountant, did payroll. Everything they threw at me, I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that. And ended up as controller. So in 2009, the Bright family decided to sell that company, and they sold it to Penske. I was very involved in the sales process, but when they sold to Penske, they were going to close down the corporate offices in Garland, Texas. They were kind of in the DFW area.
All right.
And they offered me a position in Pennsylvania. Did I mention I'm Colombian? I don't like the cold weather. So I said, I don't think I can handle Pennsylvania. Let me see if I can find something locally. So I started, monster.com, sending resumes left and right. And I got a call from the controller back then at Ulterra, came to a couple of interviews, completely different industry. I think the only thing they have in common is, drill bits, we rent them. So there's a rental fleet. So all the KPIs that you use to rent trucks, you could use to rent drill bits. So that was probably the only thing in common. And we were owned by private equity in 2010 when I joined Ulterra. So private equity had the goal of at some point selling the company. And I had just sold the previous one. So they thought, okay, well, she could be a good fit. She could help us sell again. So I joined Ulterra in 2010, thinking I was going to sell the company and go do something else. I took a huge chance moving to Ulterra. They were trying to start international operations. I had no international experience at all. And I took a huge pay cut, and I went from controller back to basically accounting supervisor when I first started here. Took a very big pay cut. But I thought, you know what, I want the international experience. I studied international business. it's worth it. I'll learn something new. I'll learn something different. I'll get to see kind of how international operations work. So I said, why not? And
so that was your
here I
mind.
am.
That was your mindset going from a trucking company to a completely different industry. And I kind of want to talk about this a little bit right now, because I think the current, and we're recording this in middle of September in 2020. The current industry right now, there's a lot of people right now kind of facing these challenges, I guess, that you were in 2009, potentially switching industries with kind of similar, I mean, if you're in sales on oil and gas, you can get sales anywhere because it's all about building relationships. So you went from a trucking company to a drill bit company, and you had no prior knowledge about, did you have any knowledge about the oil and gas industry previously?
Not at all. Had no idea what a rig looked like or what it was or anything like that.
So how was that mentally for you from going from from this company to a completely different industry?
Well, and it's a very interesting proposition because I think about it a lot right now as well because of the current market situation post-COVID or during COVID. I started finding what strengths, like I kind of touched on it, what strengths did I develop in my previous role, although it's a completely different industry, that I can apply to this one. And again, so different. These are drill bits. We manufacture them. They're going downhole. The other ones are trucks, completely different industry. And the only thing I kept thinking is that, well, you know what? The KPIs are somewhat the same. We got to track utilization. We got to track. So I started looking at, think based on my old job, what were the key metrics I focused on? How could I bring those here and try to build efficiencies and how it would apply here? So it's just, I did kind of a mental recollection of what were the key things that I knew over there that could be applicable over here. And, if I ever leave Ulterra, hopefully not, but if I ever leave Ulterra, I think it's the same basis, right? What did I learn here, or what can I take from what I've done here that has made us different and has made us good that I could apply somewhere else, even if it's a completely different industry?
Well, you got this new job offer in this new industry, and not only did you accept it, but you also took a step down on your career path, and you also took a pay cut. Can you speak to, was it more of a long-term goal that you had, or was it more like, well, there's nothing else being offered right now, so I better hop on this?
No, I had probably another opportunity just going to an accounting firm. So it was whether I stayed in industry or went to an accounting firm. And, I'm a little crazy. So I thought this is a long-term vision. I don't know if it's going to play out or not. But like I said, if it doesn't play out, at least I'll learn a lot about the international operations. And it had always interested me. So I figured it's something interesting. It's something I can do. I can live with the pay cut. I mean, I could still pay my mortgage, make my car payments, and, buy groceries. So I thought, I can learn something new. I can live a normal life and carry on. And, it was probably the best decision I've ever made. I don't know what my life would have looked like if I went into, the more predictable job, which was going into an accounting firm. This was definitely, even when I told my family, I'm going to go ahead and take this one. I'm going to take the pay cut. Title's completely different. But I think there's a lot more opportunity long run. And family thought I was insane. Family thought I was crazy. Family thought it was not a good idea. And, like you said, almost 11 years later, I've learned so much from the people I've met in this industry, in this company. I am so glad I took that step back. So it's about, I think, taking a risk and taking a chance. And you know what? When you find a company you love and people you love, who cares what the title is? Who cares what the pay is? Because you will eventually be able to start enjoying it and growing within the company.
I completely, and that's kind of something interesting that my dad was at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I was, I guess, put in the time and eventually made partner there. And it's one of those things. He was he was working with the government before, and he said, I had to take a pretty big pay cut and a couple steps down when I went over to the private sector. And it's one of those things, like, just because the next step isn't promised a bump up, whether it's salary or whether it's a position title or whatever it is, you still have to, even if it's a step down, to move forward. And that's completely okay to do. And again, you're right. When you work with great people, I mean, it doesn't matter how, I mean, you can make, $5 million a year. And if you work with people that make you miserable and that suck, then you don't want to do that. So you're not going to be happy. So I completely understand.
Not only are you're not going to be happy, you probably are not going to succeed, right? Because you don't enjoy what you're doing. So really, how are you going to add value if you don't feel like you want to get up every morning and you're trying to get more than your paycheck out of the job? I think it's critical that you find a company that you like, people that you like to work with, and just enjoy coming to work every day and do something. It has been such a ride, and it started at such a nerve-wracking situation, but it's been very good.
Can you talk to me about the career path from when you started at Ulterra to kind of where you're at today? Obviously, we don't need to go through the 11 years or 10 years and 7 months according to LinkedIn, but can you kind of explain kind of I guess the opportunity or maybe the risks that presented itself whenever you took on these new roles to kind of lead you where you're at today?
Yeah. So again, I think no idea about the industry, no clue really. Trucking doesn't have a lot of manufacturing, as you can imagine. So cost accounting, manufacturing accounting, I was pretty weak on that side. So my first challenge was trying to figure out, okay, now we have 2 big manufacturing plants. I got to account for all this. Foreign currency, I got to account for all these. So I just went and bought books, accounting books. It was so great. So I just got home every night and read accounting books to try to figure out, make sure I was doing cost accounting correctly. I'm a geek, though, by the way. If you didn't know, I'm quite the geek. So I learned.
We're not going to edit that out, but go on.
So I read all these books about cost accounting and then about foreign currency, because I didn't know how to create financial statements in different currencies. And back then it was mainly Canadian dollar and US dollar. So it was a challenge, but, I accepted it, like I said, just because I thought I was going to learn a lot, did a lot of research. So started doing that very basic accounting, cost accounting, consolidations, did all that for a while. Then I started getting a lot more involved with the operations. So we started doing monthly reviews, and I started scheduling calls with all the district managers, country managers, walking them through the P&L. They walked me through the operation. And at that point in time when that happened, I had a very supportive management team here back then, and it was, well, then get out more, go visit the field instead of having these conversations over the phone, go to Permian and let's walk through the P&Ls. And it was such a fun time. Bill Stark had just started at the company as well, and we were growing from $1 million a month, and we went to this financial review, and he goes, I promise you I can double revenue next month. And I said, it's a challenge. If you do, I buy you a bottle of wine. Sure enough, next month, $2 million. He called me up and he goes, are you on your way with a bottle of wine? I'm going to collect the bottle of wine. This isn't happening. So I started building those relationships in the field and getting to know them, and it led to being, I think I went from there to like operations controller, which meant I was helping the operations guys with their financials in and out, traveling quite a bit.
Now, were you traveling just to Permian and back, or were you actually traveling globally?
Globally. We were also starting Middle East operations, especially back then. I spent a lot of time in Canada as well. But started Middle East operations, so went to Dubai for the first time alone. Quite nerve-wracking as well, getting there. But it was a great experience. And then from there, Latin America, which obviously felt like home.
Right.
But, I traveled a lot just getting to know what people needed, what was creating challenges, and how we could help. So I became, a good communicator between the corporate office and the field operations. And so that was my operations controller role for a long time, then corporate controller. And when we sold, which by the way, in between all this time, we've sold the company 3 times. So I've worked for 4 different boards of directors. And so at one of those sales, the sale that happened in 2012, the CFO at the time said, I do not want to continue. We were purchased by a strategic ESCO corporation out of Portland. They wanted to go into oil and gas. They're a mining company. And so the role was no longer going to be CFO. It was going to be VP. So it was not the C-level suite. It didn't have the title, but it was still leading the entire finance, accounting, tax functions within Ulterra. And I said, I'll take it. Perfect. They offered it. I'll take it. So I was technically VP of finance during the ESCO ownership from 2012 to 2016, which we were part of ESCO. And then in the middle of the downturn in 16, they sold to private equity again, and I got the CFO role back then. So it's been a progression. I've never fixated on title. I think a lot of people do that as well.
They do, and they get lost in that.
That completely. They miss the entire point. I did every single function a CFO did from 2012 to 2016. I just didn't have the title. And at the end of the day, it didn't matter. I got the experience. I was running the entire department. It was great. It was a great challenge. The title didn't come, like I said, until late 16. So it was 4 years and something with just as VP of finance. And it didn't even dawn on me that I should go ask for a title. But I think that that's something that, a lot of people that are just right out of school get wrong. They really want that big title, and they think it makes a huge difference. And I think being able to build relationships inside the company makes a much bigger difference than the title you carry.
Amen. You're preaching to the converted right now. I think it's interesting too. I mean, something to point out, and then we can kind of move on. That it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that your kind of your career path was both kind of internally motivated and externally. I mean, internally, you when you get home from doing work, you're reading the accounting books. You're learning about foreign currency. You're learning about how to do learning the accounting books on your own time. Then you take the motivation to actually get out in the field and discuss with the guys and girls out there, boots on the ground, and find out what motivates them, what makes sense, what doesn't. Which, side note, side tangent, I think it's a huge deal. I remember working a corporate HSC at Noble Drilling, and I remember trying to communicate what we wanted to do corporate to the people offshore, to the guys in the field, the guys and girls in the field. And it was kind of like I was speaking a different language. Once you actually get to the field, know the people, know the equipment, learn, then you can communicate so much more effectively and efficiently. And then it sounds to me, not only did you have that self-motivation to get out there, but also you had a great, some mentorship as well.
Absolutely. Before Ulterra, I had great mentors, and I've run into great people that have given me so many opportunities. But here, when I first started, not that I was new to a male-dominated industry, because trucking's pretty much like that too. But I came to Ulterra, and the first few months while you start learning the business, I kind of kept to myself in my little office, which was more like a closet. But yeah, that's beside the point. And somebody, one of the CEOs, the first CEOs that was in the company, I didn't even work for him directly. He came to me and said, you should just start, showing up to all these meetings, even if it's to take notes, so that you learn what the business is about. And I said, well, I can't show up to a meeting without being invited. And he said, what's the worst that's going to happen? Somebody's going to say, hey, what are you doing here? Could you please step out? And they did once, and I'm Colombian, and I got really mad, and they never did that again. So that's first advice, and I think it has become such a cliche for women in an organization, but I think it should be applied not just to women in general, to people starting a career, is get involved in as many things as you possibly can. It doesn't mean that you always have to be invited. Ask if you can attend and listen. Just listening to operations strategic meetings, sales calls. I was dialing into the morning sales calls for a while just to listen what was going on and what were they doing in the field, what was needed, what was the customer saying. So again, until somebody just said, what the heck are you doing in this meeting? Get the heck out. Then I thought, okay, maybe I'm crossing some lines, but that was so important to me, that piece of advice. And then from then on, it's just been the mentorship that I've had under the last two CEOs, Johnny and John. Just how to build those relationships, how to understand basically the way the mentorship I've gotten is I am providing a service to the operations organization, the finance, tax, accounting. We are providing a service to sales, engineering, manufacturing, operations in general. So we are a service organization, and just like those guys every day are trying to figure out how to make things better for the customer, my job is to make life better for those guys. So 50% of my job pre-COVID was in the field. I was traveling 50% of the time.
Pre-COVID, 50% of the time in the field. Well, I was actually, this kind of segues into my next point of conversation is, the CFOs have a certain stereotype, accountants have a certain stereotype. And my dad always tried to break that. Like, he always dressed different, talk different and all that stuff. So how, obviously you're answering how you are different by actually going to the field and sitting with groups that aren't under your radar or under your discipline of focus. How else do you kind of lead by example, it sounds like?
Well, I think that's the biggest piece for me is I can't sit here. COVID has driven me crazy in this way. I mean, and I am not as effective in Zoom as I am in person, because I like to go out there and, outside from learning what they need, trying to remove roadblocks, trying to figure out what is it that their challenge is, that I can actually remove a roadblock. That's all I do. I think it's helped me build internal compliance in a different way. The guys in the field, before they make a decision that is pretty big, that they're thinking, how's this going to look? How is it going to impact everybody? They call me. So the way I see it is I'm kind of their financial advisor. They usually pick up the phone and say, hey, I was thinking about doing this. What do you think? So having that relationship, having built those relationships, allows us to be kind of proactive before anybody gets in trouble and makes some stupid move that, shouldn't have been made. So again, it just built these compliance department within Ulterra that people just feel comfortable picking up the phone or sending a text and saying, I was thinking about doing something. What are your thoughts?
Which is, I personally think that's huge to have that. Most of the times they'll call their supervisor, what do you think if I do this? Could I do this? This just got to the rig. Can we do this? But the fact that you have that open door policy where people feel comfortable texting or calling or emailing you regarding a decision that they make that might affect the financial impact of the company, that's pretty impressive right there. That's what I think. You don't hear a lot of people calling the CFO and being like, hey, can I do X, Y, and Z? Or is this a good idea?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. All those guys laugh quite a bit. They're usually pretty open except at budget time. I'll clarify that. When budget time comes, everybody says the world's coming to an end. And it has become, no. 2 weeks before budget calls, my phone dies. Nobody calls me. Nobody texts me.
Nobody wants to hear from you.
Nobody wants to talk to me when it's budget times. It is so funny too because just up to 2 weeks before budget time, everybody's calling. The world's great. They're record after record after record. Here comes budget time, and everybody's like, nope, customers are going to lay down all the rigs. Nobody's drilling. Everybody wants a 10% discount. We're not going to be able to do it. Because obviously, so the way the system works at Ulterra, everybody's compensation, everybody's tied to profitability or revenue. Everybody has a variable component.
Okay.
So everybody's really careful in setting targets. Because it impacts everybody's compensation. But it is really funny because, these guys have been talking to me all year. Budget time comes. It's a sad, sad story. So for the last 2-3 years, and I think they'll tell you, and it's kind of how I'm different. Every time they're presenting, we have these big meetings, they present their plan, they stand up, have their PowerPoint. And as soon as the story starts, I actually order on Amazon a little violin, and I start playing the violin. And I'm like, wait, you need some music to go with your really sad story. I think it'll create the ambience, and it'll be a little better if we tell the story with the violin. So, so I am different. I'm a little bit of a crazy CFO, but I think it makes things a little more casual where, people feel comfortable talking to me.
So how are you handling, I guess before COVID, you're going out there, you're meeting with your internal customers. And I know that there's a lot of salespeople out there, whether you're a rig contractor, you're selling bits or selling mud. There's a lot of salespeople out there that kind of are facing the exact same issue, that they can't go out and see their customers, external customers. How are you handling that? Are you still trying to keep ties with your people? And how are you doing that?
Yeah, I guess between Zoom, which it's become kind of Zoom overwhelming situation. Yeah. Everybody's on Zoom all day long. But also, we've texted quite a bit. Text has become more and more and more common just for the hey and the more casual conversation. And then especially lately since, kind of Texas started their reopening stages, we've, driven to Houston, driven to Tyler, driven to the Permian, just trying to drive and start seeing people. It has created a little bit of a challenge obviously on the international side since a lot of borders remain closed. So we're trying to do Zoom as much as we can with the international guys. But in terms of trying to get back out, we've already visited quite a bit of the Texas locations at least to make sure those guys know we're still here. So I just need this thing to be over with so we can get back on the road, because I am definitely going crazy trying to be a CFO from a desk. I don't know how people do it, JP. It just drives me insane. I can't lead with a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet only gives you so much information. You're going to make a mistake if all the decisions you're making are based on a spreadsheet.
You got to get out there. You got to get out there and meet the people. I completely agree. And it's tough these days, though. It's extremely difficult right now. And you're right. Hopefully things kind of return to, and I hate this, the new normal. I hate saying that because so many people say that, but hopefully things turn to a stage where it's not as restrictive going out there and meeting with people, whether it's external, internal customers. During these times, I guess, since March to now, I guess, how is Ulterra kind of, and you don't have to speak to this if you don't want to, because I know we're talking about you, but how have you all kind of adapted to this, to such, dramatic, this pretty much the 2020 dumpster fire we're in right now?
Oh, yeah. So the beauty of the company is we built a very nimble and resilient company. So, we moved really quickly, shifted gears, went to staggered schedules at both the plant and the field locations. People were still coming in and out the entire time, just on staggered schedules so that we wouldn't create exposure for the employees. So made sure we have service, 24/7 coverage, for example, at the plant. So we changed the entire schedule, made sure that people that were on alternate days wouldn't see the other teams, disinfected the plant in between shifts. So we changed a lot, trying to everybody stay present. The corporate administrative personnel did go home for about 2 months. We worked from home for about 2 months. And then decided that, when Texas started reopening and other parts of the world started reopening, that the relationships we have here on a daily basis are important. So most of us are back in the office, either on staggered schedules or with our masks and enhanced precautions. But yeah, moving quickly, reacting, we've changed paths about 3-4 times on how we want to handle things, has allowed us to continue to be successful. And the guys out there are doing an incredible job in being creative. I've seen some of our locations with the little green screens in the back and ready to do, conversations like kind of what you're doing with customers. And they're trying to get creative. And that's why we've done, videos. I think you've seen online. We've done quite a bit of electronic content, Benny the Bit, trying to get more engagement in different ways that are not the traditional ways that we're able to get engaged in.
Well, tell me about Benny the Bit, because I think that's something that you and I kind of talked about before we started recording. I've seen Benny the Bit several times on LinkedIn, and I kind of want you to speak to it before I give my spiel on Benny the Bit. So tell us about Benny the Bit.
So Benny the Bit is a book. It's a children's book that we created because, there's especially in the oil field where the guys and girls in the oil field are on the road quite a bit. We're not home 100% of the time, as I just said myself. So we thought it was important to create a children's book that explained to them, what do my parents do? What does my dad do? What does my mother do? And so Benny the Bit it's a little boy drill bit, and he explains to the kids. The first volume 1 was how does the bit go from cradle to grave? How is it made? The second one was about drilling, and this Benny the Bit volume 3 sneak peeks coming out here pretty soon in the next month or so. Benny's gonna have a little sister called Penelope, and she's a tiny bit. So anyway, it's a way to teach the kids what do the parents do, get them engaged so that they can ask the parents about their jobs, and it's also a coloring book, so keep them busy and keeping engaged in what are the parents doing on a daily basis. So, COVID has allowed us to bring families kind of into the work setting a lot more. And I thought this was a good way we thought it was a good way for the kids to get in a little more knowledge about, the day-to-day life of the parents.
Oh, absolutely. And for those that don't know what we're talking about, you got to check out Benny the Bit. As Maria was saying, it's a drill bit. And I think that's so crucial because the oil industry we do such a poor job of communicating what we do. Unless you're in the industry, unless you're sitting a job, unless you're trying to sell something or actually, perform some operation, drilling, completing, P&A, whatever. I think that Benny the Bit, personally, this is my little spiel. I think that it's such a great and cool, unique idea, and I love the fact that it's not just volume 1. Like, oh, we just did Benny the Bit, it's done. It's a evolving, constant evolving book for the children, and that's one of those things. I think that's something that I even mess up thinking about when I'm trying to talk to my daughter about the oil and gas industry. I just think that's such a unique, cool perspective to bring it home to your children. And for also people that don't understand the oil and gas industry. So I think that's a pretty cool move that you're all doing. So tell the team that Round the Rotary loves that idea.
Yay, thank you.
So what, I know we're coming up on a little bit of time here, but what would you say is making you anxious about the oil and gas industry? And what are you excited about the oil and gas industry currently?
Well, anxious, and I'm pretty sure everybody watched that day when oil futures went to like -37.
Right.
I was getting so many texts from, what are you doing? What are you doing? And somebody, when we hit like -30, said, I need a drink. And I said, I started thinking drinking at -1. Sorry, this is too much.
Catch up.
So aside from the instability in general in the market, the lack of demand, I think it's the challenges. Everybody knows the challenges, right? Lack of demand, oil prices, there's quite a instability. We don't know if and when the market's going to start kind of reactivating. I think we've hit bottom in the U.S. International is probably still a little lagging on, hitting bottom. But I think this is going to be a very slow recovery for us. I don't think you're going to see, I don't even know if we're going to see 1,000 rigs drilling in the U.S. anytime in the next 5 to 10 years. Hopefully I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong.
Right.
So I think the opportunities it creates, though, is for companies to be efficient, nimble, responsive. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for companies that are responsive and small to pivot quickly, service the customer more, focus in what the customers, the operators in particular for the service industry, the operators need right now, which is efficiency and cash. I think it gives us a great opportunity to make a difference in their drilling programs, as it relates to efficiency and cash. So I think we're focusing on trying to deliver that. I think it creates a great opportunity, not just for Ulterra, but anybody our size that wants to partner with and to focus on how to, put cash as king, like any typical CFO would say, and then to try to drive efficiencies. But, I think it'll create opportunities even for new companies. I think there's going to be consolidation at the larger level, but I think the smaller companies have a great opportunity if they can remain nimble to make a difference in this market.
I think that's exciting. And I think you're right. I mean, no one knows what the rig count's going to do. No one knows what oil price is going to do. And if I have to, I swear I could get rich if I made $1 on every article I see on LinkedIn or a rig zone about, oil could be at, $200 by 2022, or oil's going to be at $30 until 2025. Nobody knows. And I'm tired of these articles. I don't base my action off those articles.
Exactly. Exactly. I know. You got to know what's important now. Efficiency is important. Cash is important. And we just got to focus on how we deliver those two. So you got to move quickly. The customer needs it today. Let's change gears. I mean, I was telling my guys, I was sitting here with some of the U.S. field guys yesterday at lunch, and I said, how do we continue to be disruptive? What's next? I mean, what does the customer need next? We got to be disruptive. And I think it's a great opportunity for smaller companies to take that mentality and go that direction.
I completely agree. I mean, why sit and wait? You know, I mean, it's time to get out there, change, try stuff, try new things, and
Right.
reinvent the wheel. Not reinvent the wheel, but pretty much reinvent the wheel, and kind of how can we deliver to the customers higher efficiencies, reduce costs. I kind of want to tell me something interesting about yourself, and we talked about this, outside of your current role, that one of your hobbies that you are passionate about.
I am very passionate about race cars. So I love racing cars. It's just the most amazing experience I've had. I got into it because somebody at Ulterra, I've always loved cars. I like cars and I like speed, and I've been told that in the road that's not a safe combination.
Right.
So, you know, somebody at some point said, hey, have you ever tried to go to racing school? And I said, what? So I looked into Skip Barber, who is a very traditional name in the racing world, and they still do racing schools. And I signed up for, you know, a 3-day racing school, and I went to Limerick Park in Connecticut the first time I got on a race car, and after the first day I thought, what the heck did I just get myself into? You know, the first lesson, which is terrible. First is a classroom lesson on safety and, you know, a little bit of the car dynamics. And
How long ago was this?
About a year and a half ago.
Okay, so this is kind of a new hobby that you're kind of
well, the cars and wanting to be in that space has always been a passion. I just never actually did it.
Right.
Until about a year and a half ago. And I've ever since I've raced in Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Just an incredible feeling crossing those brakes, the finish line with the brakes, and walking down that. It's just I can't describe it. The focus it needs, the concentration you have to have when you're in a race car, where you basically have to forget about everything else that is happening around you, or you're going to crash. Basically,
just like a podcast.
Your life depends on making sure that you don't get sidetracked. So I found it relaxing, and I know it sounds kind of weird, but my job keeps me going 24/7, and racing cars makes me focus on something for an extended period of time that I can't have my phone with me. I can't be answering calls for that period of time when I'm in the car. So it is so exciting, and if anybody ever wants to try it, I mean, do it with the professionals, but these guys that have these racing schools know how to do it right. They have a system, and yeah, if COVID hadn't hit, I would have been probably racing a lot more this year, but as soon as...
No, I was about to ask you that. So when was the last time you raced, and when's the next time you're racing?
The last time I raced was March, right when COVID kind of hit.
Okay.
I think they shut down racing for a little bit, like everything else in the world, and it has resumed. But it started, the first few races started in the Northeast. So Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, and they have that 2-week quarantine period from anybody coming from Texas. So yeah, I mean, aside from telling my CEO, hey, I'm going to go racing, I'm also going to go 2 weeks and sit there before I race, wasn't really going to work. So I'll probably start racing here in the next 30 days when they wait until it's a little cooler down south, because inside that, you know, fireproof racing suit, it's really hot. Once you take that suit off, your clothes are drenched. Right. Drenched in sweat. So they'll bring it down to Georgia and Florida, even Texas. They're racing in Texas this weekend. But the Formula cars, and I like racing the Mustang GTs. I race a full. I don't race open wheel. I race a Mustang GT. Okay. And so when they bring those down to Georgia or Florida, I'll probably be there, which is in the next 30 days. So excited, so ready.
That's what you're excited for. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Hey, you never know. Maybe times get better. We can get Benny the Bit to sponsor a NASCAR car. You never know. You never know. Just see
You never know.
Benny the Bit on that. Well, am I not bringing up anything that we want to discuss, or
No, I think it's been a great discussion. I think you do a great job with these things. I don't know how you got started, but I love it.
Well, thank you. Do you have any message to our audience or people listening out there currently?
I kind of like we talked about, take a chance. You know, things don't necessarily are going to work out the way you planned them, but taking a chance on a different job, on a different position, on a pay cut, on doing something completely, even like I said, racing cars, take a chance on something you've never done, whether it's a job, whether it's a hobby, and I think it changes your life. You might just find a new passion, and it'll probably be the long-term story you'll be telling in the podcast. Thanks.
Well, I like that. Well, thank you, Maria. I appreciate that. And everyone, again, this is Maria Mejia, the CFO and Senior Vice President at Ulterra Drilling Technologies. If you have any questions for her or for myself, or you can reach us at roundtherotary@cap-petro.com. Again, that's roundtherotary@cap-petro.com. And I encourage everyone out there, family or no family, to check out Benny the Drill Bit. Benny the Bit. So I encourage everyone to look at that. Benny the Bit. So, all right, Marie, we appreciate it, and keep us updated on whenever you start racing again. We'd love to hear from you.
I will. Take care.
We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.